Hi there, and welcome to Grimwit with Dimwits. I'm Blondie.
And I'm T.
And in honor of Reignited Sparklers July, we wanted to bring this episode back for a few reasons. Personally, this is one that I feel I'm the most relaxed, and like T says, we started getting our groove going. But this episode, T put a lot of time into research and produced a story that is interesting and infuriating at the same time. She brought up some facts that saddens my heart, but we hope will eventually change.
Yes, we do. So this episode is near and dear to my heart because after researching the death penalty system currently in place in California, which I really didn't know much about, I was actually very surprised at how much it personally affected me, knowing that justice was not given to families who've lost their loved ones in an unimaginable, nightmarish fashion by these evil doers. Probably like most people, I assumed that when a convicted murderer is sentenced to death, it took a little time, but it was a done deal. However, that is not the case. So here we go with murdering the death penalty.
Hi everyone, this is Blondie, the dimwit extraordinaire.
And this is T, and I just want everybody to know she just gave herself that name, pulled it right out of her behind.
You know what? That's the best place to pull stuff sometimes.
I think you got a lot packed in there. You keep pulling stuff out.
A lot of years. Welcome to Grimwit with Dimwits. This week we have something that was an extension of our last two episodes.
Yes.
That was a huge question. We thought, what the heck? Let's look into it and see where it takes us.
So naturally, she made me do all the work.
Of course. Hello.
She's just dimwit extraordinaire.
Yes, but I'm technically sound.
Yes, you are. I can't even argue with that.
That's right.
But no, you're right. Your story set a spark going that, I was sitting there going, huh? The whole time? What? How is this possible?
So, she means, and let's clarify, she means, why is this man still alive?
Yes. If you didn't hear that story, yes. And I will kind of briefly give you an overview. Randy Kraft and the fact that he is a serial murderer and was sentenced to death and is still alive just pissed me off. I'm not even going to lie about it. So that kind of set the wheels in motion. And this is where we came up with this week's episode. So I will say I am a little surprised at how outraged I am after doing this research. And I know when I've been talking to you, we've been on the same page with this. And to be quite honest with you, I didn't really think I would have taken a stance like this before doing this research on the death penalty. I mean, I guess I just assumed things were going as planned. But now that I know they're not, it's got me feeling a certain kind of way. I'm not happy about it.
And I understand. I did read the article that she researched, and it was incredible, just the statistics and the reasons why and why not. And a little bit heartbreaking, I think, too.
Very heartbreaking. And this is just a handful, such a tiny little speck of so many cases like this. And it's infuriating. It really is infuriating to think that these people are just out and about doing their thing instead of getting what they're supposed to have coming.
Well, not necessarily out and about. They're caged.
Well,
but
they're caged, but, they're
still living their lives.
Still living as far as out and about.
Yes.
But they're like cage-free chickens.
No antibiotics.
But anyways, I'm ready to start the episode, unless you wanted to say something else.
Yes. Let's get our grim on.
You are jumping way ahead because we said we were going to put that in another spot.
All right.
She is trying so hard to be extraordinaire.
I'm sitting here doing jazz hands.
Lord have mercy. Okay.
All right. So over there, episode Nazi, go ahead.
There's a lot of truth in that. I can't even argue with you. That's actually probably a good little name there for me.
Yes. Yes, you do have your moments.
Grammar queen.
Yeah, well.
If you get to be extraordinaire, I get to be grammar queen.
Okay, you know what? You take that title. I dare you.
Now everybody's going to call me out on my mistakes. I need to pull that back real quick.
No. It's in the universe.
All right. First of all, I want to preface this by saying that this episode is not about Randy Kraft. I didn't want people to tune in and be like, oh my gosh, they're talking about Randy Kraft again, right? We just covered him for the last 2 weeks. It was an awesome 2 episodes. If you guys didn't hear it, please go back and listen to it. Because, no, it was great. And Blondie did a great job on that one. And she got me going, that's for sure. which is why we're here right now.
And that's a big job.
That's a big job. Or is it?
We'll never know.
Focus.
Okay.
But I am going to use him as one of the examples of why the death penalty system that is currently in place is, in my opinion, failing miserably.
Wow.
And yes, overall, case by case, there are many variables. And so, people are going to come at us with, well, what about this? And what about that? And I get it. Okay. But that's why I want to briefly focus on Randy Kraft's case, as well as a few others, to clarify how the lack of justice can be so freaking unjustified. And it's making me crazy. Following our 2-part series on Randy Kraft and trying to comprehend why, after 40 years, people, on California's death row, this convicted, sadistic, merciless serial killer with a minimum of 16 beyond evil murders of young men that included torture, rape, sodomy, and mutilation, is still alive and well.
So, I can't even.
I know, and I'm sorry if I'm coming across all angry, but I kind of am.
You just got started.
Just wait. Got started.
Just wait, people.
That's right. I'm going to go into mama voice here pretty soon. Everybody's in trouble.
A duck.
Don't make me come over there. Because I will.
Put some whip outs on people.
That's right. But hearing this case made me cringe and want to dive a little bit deeper into why he has yet to be executed. If you're not aware of his crimes, he is suspected of up to 67 murders. 61 of those have been recorded on his very own scorecard. And yet he still has the right to continue living out what will more than likely be his full and natural life. He is currently 78 years old and has been incarcerated since May of 1983. This monster has been given the gift of life for over 65 years longer than his youngest known victims, who were only 13 years old. His victims ranged in age from 13 to 35 years old. And of course, taxpayers are picking up the bill to support this scumbag for all 4 decades and until his dying day, which should have been a hell of a long time ago.
A long time ago.
A hell of a long time ago. It's not fair that 13-year-olds are being killed and this guy gets to live to be 78 years old.
And he's right. He probably will live his natural life.
He will. And that is not justice. No. It is not justice. Okay, back on track. As Blondie previously stated, hold on. Let the grim begin.
No. Let's get our grim on.
I'm like, why are you stopping me?
No, let's get our grim on.
Okay, we're going to fight about this forever, but it's let the grim begin.
Yeah, okay. You did the research. I'll let you have this one.
All right, thank you. As Blondie previously stated through her research, the expense to house inmates is approximately $34,000 per year, with an additional $90,000 for death row inmates due to their private cells, medical expenses, additional staff, and other maintenance resources required.
When I looked that up, besides the fact that this jackass, yes, I'm saying jackass, however, before I think I called him other things, but since I'm a lady.
Oh, so when did that happen?
But, they don't know me. You don't know me. The fact that this jackass is still alive and the victims' families haven't gotten justice, what we are paying for him to live each year for more than 40 years is more than some people make in a year. And that's just the basic inmate expense. It's awful.
When I pay taxes, I'm not paying taxes to keep an animal like this alive.
No.
It's disgusting.
There are so many other things that it could go to.
There are so many other programs that go without so that Beanchy Randy Kraft can live his full life.
You just did not say Beanchy.
I did say Beanchy because it doesn't count if you say it in Spanish.
Okay. Well, I will let that one go. I will let you have that one.
I told you, I'm mad.
You should see her eyes. They're all flaming.
I know, they're all crazy. Since 1978, California, with assistance from the U.S. government, has spent approximately $4 billion on death row expenses. That's right. B as in unbelievable.
B as in BS.
Yet since that time, only 13 prisoners, now this is from 1978, only 13 prisoners have been executed in California. So let's do the math. That's an average of 308 million for each of those inmates that were executed. The Los Angeles Times warns that this number will climb to about 9 billion by the year 2030. That's not too far away. These figures are only for California because the costs vary significantly from state to state. Some California criminals who have been duly convicted and sentenced to death have been given new life. The process to convict these criminals is tedious and complicated for the victims and for the accused families. But after family members are forced to endure the horror of living through unimaginable details of their loved ones' murders, can you imagine the sense of relief they must feel when the murderer finally gets what they have coming? An eye for an eye, if you will. But no. Unfortunately, that is not how it works. In California, you better prepare yourself to watch your loved one's killer potentially outlive you.
Do I even need to say how disgusting that is?
It's repulsive.
You know, I've said it once. I will continue to say it. If you've been convicted without a shadow of a doubt, like Randy Kraft,
Exactly.
I mean, in his case, there was no question, 16 murders.
That idiot wrote his own scorecard.
Right? It's like, here, let me help you out, guys.
Yeah, here's everything you need to know.
But I just think that they should treat them, the convicts, killers, murderers, how they treated their victims. Honestly, I'm sure you could find people to do to him what he did to all of his poor victims. You know, or just put him in Gem Pop. You know, Gem Pop definitely would solve the problem.
You would hope, because I think that's where he's going when this is all said and done.
Ugh.
Maybe this will write itself after all. But anyway, we'll get
We
to
digress.
that part.
We
Yes,
we digress.
There are more rights within the process for these convicted killers than most people could ever imagine, because it is unimaginable that they, serial murderers who murdered for kicks, would receive so much more compassion than was ever bestowed upon their innocent victims. And it's becoming an epidemic across the nation to humanize and spare the lives of these self-proclaimed grim reapers, who, when they had the chance to show compassion, did not do the same.
Or just not even, no compassion, just stop. Don't do it.
Breathe. Take a deep breath. So let me update you all on the methods of execution that still exist in the United States. The first one is lethal injection. This one seems to be the most popular. The criminals are sedated, and then this process takes about 5 minutes, and it seems fairly peaceful.
Well, we wouldn't want them to suffer.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it seems somewhat humane. The second one is electrocution. This is definitely my least favorite. I just keep envisioning like flames on the inside of your body.
Ironically enough, me and my black soul are okay with that.
Yeah, you know, I'm okay with it too, because I'm getting mad now. So you know what? You get what you get.
You get what you get.
Get what you get. Lethal gas. I think this one should be mandated for anybody who strangled their victims, because essentially you just choked to death.
Yeah, well.
And you know what?
Here you go. This is what it felt like.
That's right. But the fourth one is hanging. Now that one seems kind of old school, a little bit barbaric to me, and it seems like it takes too long. I know. I'm not saying they don't have it coming. I'm just saying it seems, I don't know. This one actually doesn't seem very humane, and I'm still okay with it. But I'm doing a little bit of a comparison here.
Okay. Continue.
The fifth one is firing squad.
Oh, the way you say that.
I know. I'm excited.
Squad.
It's my personal favorite. and if I were to be executed, this would be my first choice.
You're just a little sick for TV. I tell you right now.
I have the whole visual in my head.
First, you're going to jail overnight, and then you're going to be executed by firing squad.
In my head, firing squad is like a guy with a blindfold, and then everything's beige for some reason. There's like a bunch of guys lined up, and boom, 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 it's over.
Okay, the hood thing, I believe that's for hanging, but you know what?
No, I think they do. Anyway, we'll get into that. Okay. Anyway, that's what I visualize, and I know nobody wants to be part of whatever's in my brain.
You shouldn't even be part of what's in your brain.
I agree. So the sixth one, there's actually a new method, nitrogen hypoxia. Now, I didn't know much about this one, so I looked it up. It's a method of inert gas asphyxiation that forces an individual to only breathe in the nitrogen, leaving them with insufficient oxygen needed by the body to perform regular functions. This one sounds interesting, pretty much another method of suffocating. And I'm not sure how I feel about this, maybe because there's no visual in my head. Do what you got to do.
Whatever works.
Do what you got to do.
Do all of them.
I guess this one's kind of becoming a bit more popular as time goes on. I was a little taken back by hanging and the firing squad still being active. Those two don't seem as trendy considering all the sensitivity in today's world.
I would say, honestly, hang them, let them sit there and ponder while they sway back and forth what they did while they're trying to breathe.
Isn't that a movie? Hang 'em high.
Probably.
I think it is. California is one of 24 states that in 2023 still allows capital punishment. But Governor Gavin Newsom has been forcefully advocating for completely dismantling California's death row. Under Newsom's plan, all male death row inmates will be transferred from San Quentin Prison to other maximum security prisons throughout the state. The 21 female death row inmates were also offered the option to move, but they, catch this, will be allowed to go to less restrictive housing, where they can join work programs and receive rehabilitation. I'm guessing there's a tea party in there. I don't know.
Why? They still did the same thing.
They're still killers who are being punished and sentenced to death just because they're women. It infuriates me.
And as a woman, I have no sympathy.
Exactly. 8 of the 21 women have already been moved, and with less security, it sounds like they're living their best lives, unlike their victims.
Having their little tea party.
Exactly. I still don't understand why less security and more benefits. Why?
Honestly, if all the appeals have been exhausted, why are they even here? They shouldn't even have an option to be moved. That's just horse poo-poo.
Yep, I agree. Proposition 66, a 2016 voter initiative, was intended but failed to speed up the process for the death penalty. People that voted for that are my like-minded people.
Exactly.
A lesser-known portion of that proposition allowed, as discussed earlier, the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation to transfer condemned inmates to other maximum, that's what it says, security facilities, and into the prison's general population. It clearly says maximum security prisons, not less when it comes to women, transferring them into less secure prisons because, I don't know, maybe they're just delicate flowers.
With knives and guns and whatever in their hand.
Right. Here we go with another great Newsom nugget.
Yeah, I already think that's some kind of nugget.
I did not realize how anti-Newsom I was.
I don't really know if it's the person so much as the ideas,
I never really dug into him, and I probably don't want to after this because I'm thoroughly disgusted. And once all those pesky prisoners are gone, then Newsom will be free to transform San Quentin Prison into an educational, job training, and rehabilitation center. Aww, a dream center for all of California's nightmares.
And who is paying for all those nightmares?
Who do you think? I know a big part of it comes out of my check. The CDCR says the move allows the state, quote, to phase out the practice of segregating people on death row based solely on their sentences, end quote. Call me crazy, but forget the sentence. What about we base it solely on their freaking crimes? I'm guessing they're concerned about the death row inmates not being able to socialize, even though they pretty much jacked that up hardcore the last time they had the opportunity to socialize. And is it really unreasonable being concerned about condemned killers having physical contact with other people? Am I the monster for having trust issues?
No, not at all.
Thank you.
Let's just, again, put them back into the population, let them socialize, let them play games, and have their meals made for them and their medical taken care of. Oh, anger bubbling.
Exactly. Throw them all on an island. Let's naked and afraid their butts.
Without the cameras and the backup people.
Right. A pilot program for Proposition 66 also forces the inmates to work prison jobs where 70% of their pay would be designated to go to their victims' families for restitution. Since 2016, over 100 death row inmates have already been moved from San Quentin, and this pilot program has raised over $49,000 to go towards the victims' families. When I read this, I definitely had some feelings. I know these funds could help family members who absolutely deserve to be compensated in some fashion. So I'm not saying they're not entitled to it. They absolutely are. And if that was the only way they could get under the killer's skin, they should without a doubt jump all over it. But I'm sure there are some people who would much rather see these monsters put to death, as was promised, than to receive 1 red cent. It almost seems as if they're trying to pay them for their pain, which is so backwards. And it's not about a dollar amount at all, but to add insult to injury, when I looked at the figure, so far it's less than $50,000 spread over 100 inmates. How ridiculous is that?
So, beyond ridiculous. Again, it's not about the money. The families deserve to know the killer's no longer breathing. But because I'm the numbers girl, I did do some quick calculations on this to reiterate your how ridiculous question. So, if you have 100 death row inmates costing $124,000 a year, times 7 is almost 87 million. Yes, that's with an M, as in monstrously unfathomable. They're giving these poor family members under $50K spread over how many families? I say fulfill their sentences and give at least a part of that $87 million to the families. If that's their purpose to, I don't want to say pay the families off, but give them some sort of restitution.
Right. And I'm guessing you're using the 7 years because that's from 2016.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I was wondering. Yep. No, I would agree. When you break it down like that, that's a freaking lot of money.
For under 50,000. And did it happen to mention how many families that goes over?
Well, 100 death row inmates. I mean, I'm assuming
it's those 100 people.
Well, it probably gets spread further now that you're saying that, because these people had multiple victims.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're talking
pennies.
That's even more insulting. Let's just add insult to injury.
Right. And here,
ridiculous.
Let me keep working to give you pennies to say, yes, I murdered your family member. And
yeah. Here you go. I'm paying for it now. Literally paying for it.
That's not paying for it.
That's horrifying. Okay. Breathe. The CDCR stated that after the inmates have been transferred out, they have no intention to repurpose the $853,000 execution chamber located within the prison that was built in 1938. We're talking about San Quentin now.
Mm-hmm.
The chamber is an airtight steel capsule originally designed for executions by lethal gas. But when the state decided to replace lethal gas executions with lethal injections as a more humane method, the state modified the space by simply cramming a gurney into the chamber to perform the lethal injections. This lazy and inadequate modification created a cramped workspace and poor sightlines for the execution team, which then created violations that ultimately temporarily suspended the death penalty in California. Something so minor, right?
Right.
But another major reason for temporarily suspending the death penalty was that the level of pain experienced from the lethal injection was deemed not humane to the condemned criminal.
Oh.
Right? My heart is bleeding right now. In order to ensure that the condemned dies without a cruel and unusual level of pain, a judge ruled that the state's executioners must carefully observe the prisoner for signs of the effectiveness of the anesthetic, followed by evidence of death. This was impossible for the execution team to do through the small windows in the old gas chamber. So the way I'm reading this is that following the lethal injection, the execution team would step out and have to look through the chamber windows, along with all the other people that were there witnessing the event and crowding those few small windows. Therefore, the execution team did not always have an unobstructed view. So basically, if they could not clearly see if the condemned who might, wince in pain, because Lord knows we don't want that, or they could not see when the prisoner officially died, then it was deemed inhumane and could no longer go on. Why? This is such nonsense.
Oh, that's a very nice word to say.
Oh my gosh, you took the words out of my mouth. You literally read my mind right there. I was like, nonsense, I'm being so nice.
You're being overly nice. You're being humane.
Right? I'm being humane. And I'm not trying to be. Not only because of the over-concern regarding the anesthesia and pain level, but the complete lack of effort to remedy the problem. It's a quick fix, folks. If they had just designated windows for the team where no one else was allowed to be, perhaps a little partition, some masking tape on the floor, any color, pick a color, or even a fancy velvet rope barrier would have done the trick. Problem freaking solved. Move forward and finish the damn job. But wait, I'm about to impress the hell out of you right now and tell you what those velvet rope thingies are called. Right? They're called stanchions.
Impressive.
You're welcome.
Purpose.
You're welcome. I can hear the applause all over the world.
So basically, why couldn't they use the stanchions to hang them if the injection didn't work?
They might be a little low to the ground.
Oh my God, I can't even.
Might have to hold them down a little bit. But I like where you're going.
We talked about, and I'm going back to Randy Kraft because we just did that series, but Randy Kraft wasn't thinking about being humane when he did those horrifically painful things to those poor men. So why should we give a rat's ass if the killers die humanely? With today's technology, seriously, people, put a camera in the room and watch it from a monitor. Hello. I'm sure. Can't they get all that at Best Buy? And I don't know, probably on sale.
Probably
have a coupon.
Probably. You could even use a baby monitor because they're all acting like babies. And I'm done with it.
I'm over it.
Currently, California has the nation's largest death row population. It's great to know as a Californian, isn't it? Yes, we won.
I don't even know if we were actually in that race, but somehow we managed to win.
In March 2019, Newsom announced a moratorium on executions in the state of California that at that time affected 737 death row inmates. He stated that absolutely no executions will take place while he is governor. Okay, I did that on purpose. I'm picking up a little bit of a God complex, so I needed to do the voice.
Yes, talk about God complex, please.
Then in 2022, Newsom stated that California's entire death penalty will be completely dismantled within the next 2 years. And that was in 2022. I guess he just folded his arms, bopped his head, and poof, it's gone.
Oh my gosh, when you said that, I would like to counter that with a twitch of my nose and poof, Newsom's gone.
Either one works.
That's right.
Newsom was quoted as saying, quote, "I think premeditated murder is wrong in all its forms and manifestations, including government-sponsored premeditated murder. I don't support the death penalty, never have. That's a hell of a thing. The prospect of your ending up on death row has more to do with your wealth and race than it does with your guilt or innocence. We talk about justice, we preach justice, but as a nation, we do not practice it on death row." End quote. I am so not a fan of this statement because, I don't know about you, but it's pretty confusing. And I think I know what he's trying to say, and I'm not saying that he's completely wrong about the system being unjust in some situations, but we have to realize that in every subjective process, there's definitely a margin of error for many reasons, and every case is going to have its own special set of circumstances. But I can't help but feel like what he's saying as a governor is very anti-government.
Mm-hmm.
So do we just continue to let the condemned never be condemned? Where does all this criminal compassion leave the victim's family members? Already deprived of their loved one, and now deprived of their righteous justice. I don't care how you slice it, it's not right.
You're absolutely right. And what kind of message is that sending to criminals?
Exactly.
Do what you want. You won't die and be taken care of the rest of your life. I get what you're saying, though, about, the margin of error. I think that if you take it on a case-by-case basis. But honestly, I don't think Newsom, just from that statement, knows the meaning of premeditated murder, meaning the killers are sentenced to death due to their actions, where execution is the consequence. That's just my opinion. I don't think he gets it, and it just...
They went through the process. They had all their appeals and
Exactly.
everything that they were entitled to, and this is where we ended up. So why aren't we doing what we're supposed to be doing?
Because he's got a God complex, and because he doesn't agree.
Right? I mean, go ahead and make a moral decision for everybody.
Right.
That title does not entitle you to
Even
do that.
when the moral majority said, this is what we want.
Right.
He's like, well, you know what? I don't really care about you. I'm going to do what I want.
I still think it's wrong. Therefore, we're going to do it my way. Breathe. Stanford law professor Robert Weisberg, the co-director of the Stanford Criminal Justice Center, called Newsom's criminal transfer plan, quote, a matter of political symbolism, to get into the voter's mind the idea that we don't need the death penalty anymore. He's making a cultural and moral statement, end quote, Weisberg said. And personally, I would highly agree with Weisberg on this.
Back to Newsom's God complex.
Exactly. Overall, there are 27 states, the federal government, and the military that authorize capital punishment. But that leaves 23 states within the District of Columbia that still do not. More than 1/3 of the states that authorize the death penalty, the federal government and the military, have not had an execution in over a decade, with some, like California, even longer. California's last execution was in 2006. The other states that have the death penalty but have not used it in many years are New Hampshire since 1939, Kansas 1965, Wyoming 1992, Colorado and Oregon 1997, Pennsylvania 1999, Kentucky 2008, Utah 2010, Montana, Nevada, and North Carolina 2006. The federal government's last execution was in 2021, and the military has not had an execution since 1961. There's quite a variation between the states. While California has over 700 waiting to be executed on death row, New Hampshire only has one, and that state has recently abolished the death penalty and changed it to life without parole. But this may not apply retroactively to the one prisoner left on death row. Sucks to be you. He may still have to be executed. Legal and political factors have played a prominent role within the states that have the death penalty but are not carrying them out. Due to ongoing issues with utilizing the lethal injection method for execution, as of March 2023, Idaho is pushing forward to reinstate the firing squad.
Yay!
Woo, my fave! As an alternative humane method. Other states that have authorized firing squads are Mississippi, Oklahoma, Utah, and South Carolina. In fact, Utah's last execution in 2010 was by firing squad. Ronnie Lee Gardner was convicted for the killing of attorney Michael Burdell during an attempted escape from a Salt Lake City courthouse. He also shot and wounded George Kirk, a bailiff whose family said that he died 11 years later due to complications from his injuries. Gardner's original charge was for killing Melvin John Otterstrom during a 1984 robbery at a bar. Gardner was a menace to society for many years, so on June 18, 2010, he was strapped to the execution chair. His eyes darted around the room, but he appeared calm. A black hood was slipped over his head, and a small target was attached over his heart. A team of 5 anonymous marksmen, armed with .30 caliber Winchester rifles, standing just 25 feet away behind a brick wall with a gun port, aimed their weapons. Then a countdown was followed by loud bangs, and it was over. To cope with any potential guilt, one rifle is loaded with a blank, so no one will know who actually fired the shot.
Okay, I wait. Sorry, I have a few questions here. First thing, the firing squad is done by marksmen, but what happens if death isn't instantaneous? Does he just sit there and bleed out? How more humane is that than injection? That will make them go to sleep and they just fall away.
Well, I'm not sure, and that may be on a case-by-case basis as well. I know people can survive being shot. So if a person does not die during an execution, they are immediately re-executed. That's what's supposed to happen.
I still find the firing squad a lot more inhumane.
I actually find it much more humane because it's instantaneous. Like I said before, if it were me being executed, this would definitely be my first choice.
Again, I will put that in my T notes for later reference. But okay.
That doesn't mean you get to do it at will.
Oh, well,
sorry.
I didn't add that little notation when I did that. But also, I do have another question. So they load one rifle with a blank. Is that to make the marksman believe that it could be in anyone's gun? So like 4 shots are being fired. One is blank. So any of them could have had the blank.
To my understanding, it is for that reason, so that hopefully down the road, nobody has any guilt about killing someone.
Yeah, I get it. I understand that.
Yeah, I understand that too. That is definitely something that somebody could struggle with down the road. They didn't even know that guy, you know?
True.
And so I think it's a good thing. It's ironic that between 2000 and 2018, California's death row population has risen 28%, which bypasses any other state by far, with half of that number being from January of 2006.
Here we go, winning again.
Right? When we stopped doing executions, it all went up. But yet everybody on death row is just sitting in their private cells, being fully supported by taxpayers, and just waiting it out. They know that nobody is going to hurt them, and with Newsom's plan, they will all eventually be transferred out and placed into general population. You know, just one big slumber party every night for the rest of their lives. Sounds pretty promising.
And then again, here sits the families having to go through it all over again if they're moved and their sentences aren't even carried out. I mean, not that I wish death on anyone. Well, not anyone that's not on death row. I know I have a black soul, but
I second that.
Hey, all right, I admitted it fully. But I wonder what Newsom's stand would be if it was one of his family members that was murder. I mean, just putting it out there.
Right. He can't relate.
He can't relate.
He can't relate.
And he's more concerned about the killers than he is the victims and their families.
Right. I can't relate either, and I'm still mad. So it's...
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't understand. Nationwide, the number of inmates on death row has decreased to 892 between the years 2000 and 2018. But that's mainly because Texas carried out 359 executions during that time.
Wow.
I have a whole new respect for Texas. They do not play.
Exactly.
Another 81 inmates were removed by exoneration, but nationwide support for the death penalty has risen to 55% since 2018. As of January 2023, there were 2,331 prisoners facing execution in the United States.
Wow, that's a lot. I'm honestly definitely feeling Texas. And when I had read this, out of curiosity, I looked up how many were on death row in Texas as of June 2023. There were 184 compared to over 700 in California. Now, if that isn't a deterrence...
Well, I definitely would think twice before committing a crime in Texas. But in California, I'm all in.
And the thing, right? And the thing about Texas, they carry guns.
Oh, yeah, I know. They open carry.
They do.
The U.S. has a total of 16,047 documented executions between 1608 and 2022, with female offenders only making up 3.6%, which is a total of 576 female executions. The death row number fluctuates only due to people getting exonerated, dying of natural death, suicide, and death sentences being overturned. Although there are a few states that continue to carry out their death penalty executions, there has not been a single death by execution on death row in California since 2006. Kind of sounds like it's the safest place in California for a condemned criminal to be. And guess what? They get to stay there, all expenses paid.
Wow, and it's all inclusive.
Right?
Let's not forget about the prisoners' families. I heard through a source that criminals have learned how to work the system. They do their time, get out briefly to have family visits, have some good food, party, get laid, only to commit another crime and go back to jail. This way, they don't have to work and their families are fully supported through government-funded programs. Doesn't that just irritate?
I didn't know about that, but I'm not surprised. They really know how to work the system. And if one guy's got to go to jail for everybody to be supported, I can see it happening.
They're called career criminals. So
I tell you, if only they use those brains for good instead of evil.
Do you know how many times I've said that? Some of the things that they do, I mean, not your basic, robbing a mom and pop store, but some of the crimes that are committed, can't you just, use that for good?
Something. I mean, my brain doesn't function this way, but I tell you, some of them are really geniuses.
And some of them just are not.
Right. Alabama has recently been in the headlines due to the state pausing their executions following 3 failed attempts at lethal injection. Governor Kay Ivey sought a pause in executions and ordered a top-to-bottom review of the state's capital punishment system after an unprecedented 3rd failed lethal injection. Ivey also requested that additional execution dates for any other death row inmates not be sought until the review is complete. Let's just load it up with red tape.
So 3 times. What were they thinking? 3 times the charm? Let's keep trying. They do it the first time, didn't work. So do it a second time, didn't work. Okay, well, that's going to work this time. Let's just go again.
I don't know what they're thinking. The whole thing is ridiculous.
And isn't this their job? Shouldn't they be able to figure it out after it didn't work the first time?
It's not rocket science. It's really not. And I'm going to tell you about a couple of things here. One of Alabama's condemned, Alan Eugene Miller, was sentenced to death after being convicted of a horrific 1999 workplace shooting rampage. But the federal court halted his execution because apparently Mr. Miller had been given the option to designate nitrogen hypoxia as his method of choice for execution. He submitted a form and somehow that form was lost. So come execution day, they were not prepared to execute him in this manner. They were going to give him a lethal injection. So a judge stated that, quote, Miller has presented consistent, credible, and uncontroverted direct evidence that he submitted an election form, and there is circumstantial evidence that it was lost. Miller will likely suffer irreparable injury if an injunction does not issue, because he will be deprived of the ability to die by the method he chose, and instead he'll be forced to die by a method he sought to avoid, and which he asserts will be painful.
Oh, poor baby.
The injury will be the loss of his final dignity to choose how he will die. End quote. I can't make this stuff up, people.
Hands in the air. Hands in the air, Courtney.
This is truly the stuff that pisses me off. I'm going to just state the obvious to everybody else except this ridiculous judge. Where were his innocent co-worker victims' final dignities and their right not to be in pain? They did nothing but go to work that day.
Are they seriously using the lost in the mail excuse? His dog ate his homework? The incompetence is just astounding. He couldn't just complete another one? It's not like they had to track him down. Oh, no, he's going to suffer irreparable injury. What's he going to do? Come back and sue? But you know what the sad part about that is? His family probably would.
It's the whole system is
messed up. It is messed up.
It is so messed up. It is so messed up.
What's the point of voting? Honestly.
This is why I'm back to firing squad. You're going to die. There's nobody that's going to make a mistake. You're going to die. And if it takes you a little longer, I'm sorry. That's just how the ball bounces. It's just how the bullet penetrates.
I'm still voting for the hanging. Because either way, you are going to die. Because you hang there till you're gone.
Exactly. Well, let me give you another situation here.
Oh, joy.
I know, right? Following this case, there was the uncompleted execution of Kenneth Eugene Smith. He was given the death penalty for a murder for hire. This greedy bastard was paid $1,000 to kill a 45-year-old grandmother and pastor's wife in 1988. He killed her by fatally beating and stabbing her. During his attempted execution, the execution staff poked this animal for about an hour while having difficulty starting an IV line.
Okay, can't they just beat him and stab him to death?
Right. I mean,
it's ridiculous.
It's not laughable, but it is laughable because it's a joke. It really is. Smith's attorneys say, get this, Smith's attorneys say he was subjected to an ever-escalating level of pain and torture during the failed execution, while the team fumbled and could not humanely put the needle into the condemned prisoner's arm. Let's not forget, people, this is an IV needle, not a freaking machete. I'm also going to add that when I was, like 18 years old, I gave blood for the very first time. The needle actually blew a vein in my arm, and those needles are kind of thick. So most of my entire arm was bruised for a few days, and as far as pain, it just felt like a bruise. But there was never any severe pain, and definitely no trauma, as I've happily continued giving blood ever since. I'm just speaking from experience here, and Blondie is shaking her head in what I can only describe as disgust. Right?
Disgust.
The Alabama Department of Corrections has a history of denying and bending the truth about its execution failures and cannot be trusted to investigate its own incompetence, said Robert Dunham, executive director of the Death Penalty Information Center. But in May of 2023, the family of Joe Nathan James, who was sentenced to death for the gunshot murder of his girlfriend, Faith Hall, sued the state of Alabama for the pain and suffering it caused during his 3-hour-long lethal injection in 2022. It is believed to be the longest execution in history. The family claims that there was a violation of Mr. James' Eighth Amendment rights against cruel and unusual punishment. Sounds very similar to the situation that the judge went to battle for in Mr. Miller's case.
So these criminals basically still retain their rights?
Oh, no. Everybody else does it for them. It's so ridiculous.
They should have no more. I mean, I understand 3 hours is a very long time. I get that. But I can't believe that they still have their right. And why is it taking 3 hours? What is wrong with them?
3 hours does
That's
seem
the
like
question.
A very long time. But remember, they're sedated before this happens.
So they didn't feel anything.
I don't know that for a fact, but, why'd they stop the one guy 1 hour and this guy 3 hours? So I'm going to stir up a little trouble right now. After seeing how passionately the judge defended Mr. Miller's right to choose his method of execution, this inmate, Mr. James, was not given the opportunity to choose his method of execution, which would have also been nitrogen hypoxia. And a federal judge denied Mr. James' requests for a stay on July 14th to give him the time to straighten out his execution choice documentation, like the other guy who lost his.
Right.
And with that denial, Mr. James was executed only 2 weeks later on July 28th. Race has come into question as Mr. James, who is now dead following his lethal injection that took over 3 hours to complete, was not white like Mr. Miller, who still lives following his lethal injection attempt, which only lasted 1 hour before they stopped it. Governor Ivey declined to be interviewed about this. Alabama, you need to get your together.
You think?
Right? If you're going to do it all the same.
How messed up is this?
And I'm not saying everybody doesn't deserve to die. They do. But why does a little tiny detail keep one guy alive while the other guy suffered 3 times longer and he's dead? They were able to complete that one.
Good question.
You can't even explain it because there's no explanation. Anti-capital punishment groups are elated that the state with the largest condemned population, meaning California, is moving forward with efforts to, in effect, join the other states that have abolished their death rows. I would be very curious to know how many of these protesters have had their loved ones killed and had to watch their murderer grow old. And I actually wouldn't be surprised if there were a few. I'm sure there are people out there who would be far more forgiving than I ever would.
I'm sure there are, and maybe it's just, again, my black soul, but I agree. You didn't give my family member, friend, or whoever a chance at a long life. Why should you get one?
Exactly. Quote, I'm thrilled. Gavin Newsom is doing a very smart and a very positive thing, end quote, says actor Mike Farrell, a longtime activist on the issue who chairs the group Death Penalty Focus. Quote, it will continue to show people that the death penalty is neither necessary nor is it doing any of us any good, end quote. Wow. I love how he thinks he speaks on behalf of everybody. It's no wonder he's a Newsom fan. That makes perfect sense.
Oh, perfect sense. Honestly, I don't understand how and I said this before, if the death penalty was voted in by the voters, how is it that Newsom can just ignore it? What, he gonna puff out his chest and say, I know what's best for you. I'm Gavin Newsom. He may not agree with it, but it's your job. Just do your job.
Do your job. And do you know who Mike Farrell is?
I don't. I know that I've heard the name, but...
Mike Farrell is one of the actors from the old series MASH.
Oh. Which one was he? The blonde guy?
The tall blonde kind of nerdy guy. I can't remember his name.
He was the commander, or the one in charge.
They all seem like they were kind of in charge. I didn't watch that show too much, but I can visualize him. I know who he is.
I know who he is, too.
It's kind of funny that he's from MASH because I think his brain is mush now.
Not judging. No judging here.
Mike Farrell calls capital punishment barbaric and biased against black, brown, and poor people. While he wholly supports Newsom's move, he points out that many death row inmates face serious psychological hurdles. You think? Which will complicate the process of mainstreaming death row inmates. Quote, it's going to be very difficult. There are many people on death row with serious mental issues, noting that many have been isolated for decades. I think it's a very good move on Newsom's part. I just think that it has to be done extraordinarily carefully and very, very humanely, end quote. He acts like we're trying to kick naughty puppies or something. It's not the same. It's not a gentle correction. These are soulless, convicted murderers who are on death row for a reason.
Mike Farrell seen Texas's numbers? I mean, how does he know it hasn't done any good?
Exactly.
How does he know?
How can he speak for anybody about whether it's done them good or not?
Right? So let me get this straight. They are going to mainstream them, give them a softer way of life after they have, of course, gone through therapy.
Of course.
Have they ever talked about the victims? It's all about the prisoners and the effect on them. Have they lost their ever-loving minds?
the whole thing is just backwards. It, again, makes absolutely no sense. Not surprisingly, some murder victim families are opposed, and death penalty proponents and victims' rights advocates are frustrated and angry.
And there we go.
Exactly. Here's the other side. Quote, "To hear this news is devastating," end quote, says Sandra Friend. She described feeling victimized all over again. In 1996, her 8-year-old son, Michael Lyons, was making his way home from school in Yuba City, California. He was abducted and sodomized by serial killer Robert Boyd Rhodes, who, after raping and killing this child, dumped his body in a riverbed. Quote, "Rhodes tortured Michael for 10 hours, stabbing him 70 to 80 times, and he was only 8 years old, just a little boy full of life and full of dreams," end quote, Sandra says.
Okay, I'm advocating for whatever he did to this little boy. I'm not even going to continue.
No, that's kind of hard to read, actually.
That is very hard.
In 1998, Rhodes, who also had prior convictions, was convicted of first-degree murder with special circumstances of murder in the commission of forcible sodomy, murder in the commission of a lewd act on a child, and intentional murder by involving the infliction of torture. In April of 2007, Rhodes was also convicted of the 1984 rape slaying of an 18-year-old girl with more special circumstances of rape. Kathy Connell, the victim's mother, stated in 2007, and this part breaks my heart. This is what this is all about for me.
Mm-hmm.
She says, "I've been waiting 23 years to get this guy. He's the one. All I can say is my daughter can rest now." Now that was 23 years in 2007. Rhodes was sentenced to death for these heinous crimes by lethal injection. But this never happened. He remains alive and well. So much for getting that guy.
So he would actually be one that I would advocate to move to the maximum security, put him in the general population, mainstream him, because the minute that they find out what he did to an 8-year-old boy, let it be taken care of inside. We won't have to worry about it. It just is so sad.
He doesn't even deserve human punishment. He should be locked up with a silverback gorilla. See how he likes that.
Wow, that is a very specific.
Sorry, it came to my brain. See how you like that.
And you have apparently no filter between your brain and your mouth.
I'm telling you, this one's making me mad. Sorry, people. That was an ugly visual.
Justified, but ugly.
Okay, here's another quote. "The governor has taken loopholes and nuances in the law and used them to give criminals, the worst criminals, a break," end quote, says Michael Rushford, president of the Conservative Criminal Justice Legal Foundation. Quote, "To start mainstreaming people like Taquan Cox, who killed an entire family in Los Angeles after going to the wrong address to do a gang hit, is an abandonment of justice. Injecting politics into criminal justice and the public safety is insane. It's unjust, unfair, and it's stupid," end quote. Thank you, Michael Rushford. I freaking love it.
I'd be high-fiving that man right now.
Oregon's Kate Brown extended her predecessor's moratorium, and in one of her last acts as governor, Brown commuted the sentences of all 17 people on death row to life in prison with no possibility of parole. She also ordered corrections officials to begin dismantling the state's execution chamber. Quote, "I believe that there are many Oregonians that share my values, that it is inequitable, immoral, and doesn't make sense for the state to take a life, particularly when it's irreversible," end quote. But let's not forget the lives of the victims are also irreversible. who is showing any concern for their lost innocent lives.
If she's actually said it's immoral and doesn't make sense for the state to take a life, is she hearing the words coming out of her mouth? Is she some kind of ventriloquist dummy? I believe me, I think if you took a vote of the Oregonians, seriously, raise your hand if you think we should let murderers basically go. She's an idiot.
She's an idiot, for sure. Oh, so many idiots I've come across just in this one research. Are you
keeping a tally sheet?
No, I can't. I need it to go in and out of my brain so that I can function. Nationally, new death sentences in America have hit decade lows. According to the recently published annual report by the nonpartisan and nonprofit Death Penalty Information Center, Gallup polling shows a majority, 55% of Americans, are in favor of the death penalty for convicted murders. But that's in stark contrast to the consistent 60 to 80% support recorded between 1976 and 2016. So not too long ago, the support was much, much, much higher.
I will keep my thoughts and opinions to myself for that.
Okay. In California, Sandra Friend, now remember, this is the mother of Michael Lyons.
Okay, the little boy.
Killed,
yeah.
Says it's outrageous that killers like Rhodes may get rewarded, as she puts it, with expanded work options or even a cellmate. And for him to be able to leave death row and go into a cushier prison, having maybe possibly a cellie and having a job, is terrifying because he is the worst of the worst. He is a monster, she says.
I don't know. I defer to my prior statement about put him out in general population and let everybody know what he did. And oh, by the way, is he going to get a job and pay her pennies?
Exactly. And I'm going to defer to my silverback gorilla comment. State officials underscore that inmate transfers and their housing will depend on the specific facts of each inmate. Quote, their housing would depend on their individual case factors, and that is what the multidisciplinary teams will be evaluating, end quote, says CDCR spokeswoman Vicki Waters. But Sandra Friend, and other victims' families worry that simply allowing death row inmates to mingle with prisoners who will eventually get out is dangerous. I could not agree more.
Mm-hmm.
Quote, just to think about him, meaning Rhodes, interacting with other inmates and having the opportunity to teach those skills and those methods of keeping, under the radar is terrifying. He is a great threat to our society and our children, end quote. With California planning to empty death row, Friend vows to fight the effort. Quote, I'm definitely going to make Michael's voice heard because he's the one that is getting lost in all of this, end quote. I could not agree with her more. The victims do not seem to factor into this equation, and that really makes me angry.
I agree with you even more than that. I mean, the poor family, she has to keep living this over and over again.
There is so much information out there regarding the death penalty and where it is going. We could talk about this for days. And maybe somewhere down the road, we will do an update. But for now, I want to close this episode with some interesting facts. California is the most dangerous state nationwide with the most homicides by far each year.
That's apparent.
Lethal injection is described as a burning cocktail coursing through your veins, and once it reaches your heart, it stops the heart, and you die. This usually takes about 5 minutes. The slowest method of execution ever recorded is called death by 1,000 cuts, where the condemned have small pieces of flesh removed with a knife in order to delay death. The number of slices could be just a few, or in the thousands. This Chinese method goes way back to 900 CE, which stands for Common Era, kind of like the same as our AD, and was used until the early 1900s.
They definitely did not care about being humane, did they?
China doesn't play either. Wow. But hey, that's why people behave over there.
That's right.
Some criminals have their head and legs shaved before electrocution. Even the eyebrows and facial hair may be trimmed to reduce the odds of the prisoner catching fire.
Okay, I know this isn't a laughing matter, but did you not have visions?
I told you're going to go out with naked face.
No, I was thinking of catching on fire.
Yeah, my worst nightmare. Oh, only one man has been recorded as surviving a firing squad, a soldier for Pancho Villa, Wenceslao Moguel Herrera.
That was impressive.
Thank you. I could have went Wenceslao Moguel Herrera, but I decided not to go all Mexican on y'all. During the Mexican Revolution was captured and placed before a firing squad for execution. Though he was riddled with bullets, he somehow survived and went on to live for another 60 years.
But yeah, now that's more humane.
I think it's weird that they let him live. Like, just because he didn't die, why didn't they take
and how
few
many
more shots at him?
Wait, did they have a limit? Okay, our guns are out of ammunition, you live?
Yeah, the whole thing is weird because like, they just let him brush himself off and walk away.
Well, I'm sure it was a little bit more than just brushing the dust off his back.
It's very weird, but that's the story. The most popular last meal requests include ice cream, milkshakes, pies, fried chicken, and chicken fried steak.
Carb, 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 carb.
Right? I didn't see any steak and lobster in there. That would have been my last meal right before my firing squad.
After your 1 day of jail.
Okay, here's another fact. If an executed inmate is not claimed by their family, they are interred in prison cemeteries. I thought that was interesting because I would assume they would have been cremated.
Yeah.
But apparently not.
Wow.
The youngest female ever executed was in Connecticut in 1786, and she was only 12 years old. She was a Native American with an intellectual disability and was hanged for the murder of a 6-year-old girl of a wealthy farmer. She was accused of beating and choking the child to death.
There's opinions about that one. I mean, didn't you say she was
mentally,
intellectually disabled?
Yep.
Hey, she may not have known better, right?
I think it's very telling that in this little fact, they mention that the little girl's parents were wealthy farmers.
And she was Native American.
And the girl hanged was Native American. Yeah, you could read all kinds of stuff into that.
Mm-hmm.
In 1984, 6 inmates actually escaped death row in Virginia. They were known as the Mecklenburg Six. They were all eventually caught and executed, with the last of the 6 put to death in 1996. Inmates often wear diapers to collect body fluids expelled during and after death. It has been jokingly called taking to the diaper.
Well, I wouldn't want to clean that mess up.
Right. But if I were the inmate, I'd probably not wear one and purposely leave a little gift behind as a big screw you. Just saying.
You're a sick woman.
I know. All my sickness is coming out in this one, huh?
Yes.
I think I have a black soul now, too. It's contagious.
All these years finally wearing off.
I thought some of those facts were pretty interesting. But I want to end this by saying that technically, the death sentence still exists in California, and prosecutors can still seek it for those that truly deserve it. But I am sad to say that unfortunately, for those who are waiting for justice, and fortunately for heinous convicted killers, the death sentence is no longer terminal.
Thank you for listening. Take care and let your imaginations run wild.
We just want to thank you all for sharing your time with us. And if you'd like to send in your creepy little grim bits, we would love to hear your personal stories, interests, and suggestions. Please email them to grimwitwithdimwits@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at grimwitwithdimwits, Twitter at grimwitwithdimwits, and Facebook, Grimwit with Dimwits. Join us every Monday for new episodes and feel free to share us with your grim-loving friends.
We would really appreciate if you would take a minute to rate and review. 5-star ratings go a long way and would really help us out. Until then, we would love it if you'd come back next week to delve with us into the strange and unusual things we just can't wrap our skulls around.